Good morning, everyone. Sorry to interrupt the conversation and your breakfast. Sounds like there's some good discussion already occurring. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming out today to take part in this discussion on a very important issue. My name is Chris Pilger. I'm the Director of Member Communications with your institute. Again, thank you for coming out tonight. Just to give you, this morning, give you a little bit of a rundown of what our agenda will be and how the format will work. So what we really want this to be is an opportunity for you to engage in discussion, ask some questions about unification. So we're going to reserve the bulk of the day of the morning for that. We will have some short introductory remarks from our panelists up front, and then from there we'll entertain questions and anything else from comments from the floor. Panel includes some members of council, our CEO Rachel Miller, and some members at large who are supportive of unification, and they'll give their perspective on that. But all perspectives are welcome here today. One thing you'll notice, you might be wondering if we, have some change rooms or if we're going to try and close later over here, but those are actually voting booths. So if you haven't voted yet, either for the unification vote or for council, and you want to do that after, feel free. Those we can give you your member number and the voting. There is some computers there. You can cast your ballot after this session. So with that, I will just introduce our panelists, and then we'll turn it over to them for some opening remarks. So starting on the far end, we have Rachel Miller, CA, who is our CEO. Marilyn Kuntz, ICAA President. Matt Boodle, who's a partner with Ernst & Young. Darcy Gauncey from Trinidad Drilling. And Rob Quilley from KPMG and the Council's Vice President. So Rachel, will you kick us off?
Sounds good. So I just wanted to do a short little presentation to give you an overview of the plan, where we're at, and some of the key points. I don't want to take up too much time because I really think it's important for each and every one of you to have the opportunity to ask any questions, discuss any issues that you have, and for our panelists to have time to present some information that they'd like you to know about. So I just did want to start with the fact that the ICAA does support the unification of the three designations within Alberta. The Council did vote unanimously in support of the plan that we've been presenting to our members and that you can find on our website. One of the driving forces behind Council getting back into the unification discussions and supporting this new plan is what's happening across the country. And I think it's really important for each of us to understand what the other provinces are doing. Although we are legislative provincially, we do operate together with our national bodies. And I think it's important to know where our CA colleagues are across the province. So I just wanted to spend a minute on that. If you look out into the eastern provinces, the Atlantic region, each of those provinces are in discussions with the CAs, CMAs, and CGAs. Some of the provinces, such as PEI and Nova Scotia, are well along their way to unifying the CAs and the CMAs in those provinces, and they are approaching government for legislative changes. They've all had their member votes already with the CAs and CMAs. Other provinces, such as Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, are well on their way to including all three designations and have had whatever member votes are required with respect to unifying those three organizations. The other two that I mentioned earlier are in discussions with the CGAs, but they are completing their process of unifying with the CMAs and leaving an on-ramp in their legislation to bring the CGAs on once they're done, just due to the fact that they were so far along in their process already. When you look at Quebec, one of our largest number of members located there, they have actually just celebrated their one-year anniversary as CPA Quebec. Back in April 2012, they were the first ones to unify the CAs, CMAs, and CGAs to become CPAs in that province. One of the nice things about the fact that they've gone through this process is they've been able to provide a lot of advice to us as to what worked well, what didn't work well, and how to improve the transition and make sure that if we do proceed with unification, we have some idea of how to do that smoothly. We move over into Ontario. And this is an area where I do get a lot of questions from our members saying, well, you know what, why can't we do what Ontario did? Because back in July, Ontario issued CPA designations to all of their members who were active and in good standing. And so it appeared in the beginning that they weren't part of the unification process, that they unified with themselves. But as you see now, they have recently issued a memorandum of understanding with the CMAs, and they are out for a member advisory vote with their members as to how they proceed with unification. They have said that unification will happen. Their member vote is really to get an idea of the direction their members wish to go with the unification project. You'll see the national bodies like CICA and CMA Canada have already merged, and they're now in discussions with CGA Canada to see if they can bring them on board. So one would think when you look at Ontario's situation, they will likely bring the CGAs in as that national unification proceeds. We look up to our fellows up north, and you can see that they're all in discussions with their counterparts, CAs, CMAs, and CGAs, and they're well on their way to starting to unify in those provinces. One of the areas that is critical to us is the west, the Casby region, this western region in blue. As most of you are aware, we deliver our education program through the CA School of Business, and we deliver that on a regional basis with the other provinces in our region. Casby has indicated that they will be starting to roll out the CPA program in the fall, and they're no longer going to be offering the CA program. When we look to BC, you'll see that they are in unification discussions with the CAs, CMAs, and CGAs. They went out for member vote over a year ago to their members to unify those three bodies in that province. In the meantime, as they started to proceed forward, the CGAs did pull out of the discussions. But they proceeded to discuss their issues with the CMAs, and they are well on their way to combining those organizations. And just a month ago, the CGAs have recently announced that they would like back in discussions. They won't be going back for a member vote in BC because their member vote included all three designations in the beginning. So now they're just figuring out how to fit the CGAs in and bring them into the organization. You look to our colleagues in Saskatchewan, they have begun their unification with the CAs and CMAs. They've actually approached government already for legislative changes, and they're hoping to be on the fall agenda. Recently, they've also brought the CGAs into the fold, and they've just completed their member vote. However, we haven't heard officially what the results of that vote were. But they are anticipating that they will be bringing the CAs, CMAs, and CGAs together in the near future, and their government has indicated that they have a potential to do that in the fall session. We look at Manitoba. They were actually one of the first bodies to go out for a member vote, and they received a positive vote from their members to join the CAs and CMAs. They are one of the only provinces that currently don't have the CGAs in discussions, but I would suggest if you keep an eye on what's happening there with the CGA national body in discussions, I would anticipate that you're going to see some activity there as well. So as you can see, when Council looked at what was happening across the provinces, they really felt that they wanted to be part of the unification project, have the ability to influence where the direction of the profession was going to go in the future. So the reasons that they got into the unification again, after stepping away for several months, was in order to make sure that they are full partners in the national process. They wanted to make sure that they could maintain as well as increase their influence on a national basis, that Alberta CAs still continued to be influential as they are with the Canadian CA profession. To make sure that for our future CAs we maintained our mobility, that we had a higher degree of consistency between not only our own province but across the country. One of the things that this unification project has allowed us to do is work with our colleagues across the country to try to get some of our legislations closer together. As each province opens up their legislation, it gives us the opportunity to make some changes to make sure that we're consistent across the provinces. And also by bringing all the bodies together, we're hoping to achieve a more efficient governance model and regulation of the profession, and as well to make sure that we can then offer our members more services. As each of the provinces approached the unification projects, we kept these 8 guiding principles in mind. These can be found on our website, on the CPA Canada website, if you want more details on them. But as you read through our plan, we hope that you see each of these guiding principles throughout that plan. And as well, if you peruse any of the websites of our colleagues across the province and check out their plans, you'll see these 8 guiding principles flowing through their plans as well. And I think this was really important for each and every province to adopt these principles to make sure at the end of this project we've all done this consistently. So you'll see the evolution of a single designation, and that would be the CPA designation. Yes, it will take time. There'll be a transition period where we'll still be using our legacy designations, but the goal is in the long term to have that CPA designation be really just as preeminent, and each and every one of our members is proud of that designation as they are of their CA designation today. So along with that comes how we're going to use our existing designations. So we do have the tagging provisions within our plan that you will use your legacy designation, CA, CMA, or CGA, with the CPA designation for 10 years. What we've done here in Alberta, as well as some of the other provinces, is that we've allowed you to keep your CA designation on its own as well. So if you decide the CPA designation is not something that you need to use, you don't need to. You can continue using your CA designation as long as you want. As I mentioned before, if we do this unification right, we should be having members who are as proud to use the CPA designation as they are to use the CA designation. And our hope is that after the 10-year period, that the CPA designation will be the designation that's used by our members. We talked about the fact that we want to make sure that people retain the rights they currently have, but they don't expand on those rights. So, for instance, public accounting. If you can currently practice public accounting today, as we move forward, you'd be able to practice public accounting. If you don't currently have the rights to practice public accounting, either because you're a CA who trained outside of public practice, or you're from one of the other designations and didn't take the public accounting stream, you don't get that right through this unification plan. What you will have to do is top up your practical experience and possibly your education before you're allowed to practice public accounting. So you'll retain the rights that you have now, but you won't get any new rights just by unifying. Maintaining the rigorous certification program, I'm going to show you a little bit more about that because I think this is an important step forward to have these details on the certification program to show that this new program will be just as rigorous as our current program. I encourage you to look at the blue pamphlet that you found on your seats. That has a lot more detail on the certification program. We are working out how we will use specialties as we move forward. We will be branding the CPA as we move forward and have that common code of conduct that I mentioned, as well as managing our operations and governance. So I did want to spend just a minute on the education program to make sure people understand what the new program will look like. And this program is ready to be rolled out in the fall. You will have your qualifying practical experience, very similar to what we have today, and that will be 30 months. I know in the beginning some people may have heard that that was going to be reduced to 24 months. We had a lot of member feedback, a lot of firm feedback that indicated that that was not enough time to develop those entry-level competencies, and we've landed on 30 months nationally as the required practical experience. You will have that specific experience that you need in order to practice public accounting. And then you'll have your professional education program. You'll have certain prerequisites that you'll have to obtain to enter into the program, which will require a university degree. Each student will take 2 core modules to develop their technical competencies in order to be successful as they move forward. A new aspect of the program is that there'll be 2 elective modules. If you're going to practice public accounting, you would have to take assurance and tax. If you aren't practicing public accounting, you do have an opportunity to select some of those modules that will be more focused on the areas that you're going to work in the future. There's more information on those modules in the pamphlet that we've handed out. You'll then have 2 capstone modules, one being a case study, very similar to the current CMA program. So bringing those good aspects of the CMA program into our current program, having a case study with a board report. The difference here is there will be an individual assessment at the end of that module. You will then have your UFI prep module, and one of the myths that I hear is like, oh, well, there goes the UFI, we won't be having that anymore. No, we still will. There still will be a multi-day exam at the end, very similar to our current UFI exam. And each and every candidate will have to write that exam to get entrance into the CPA designation. So that's sort of the highlights that I wanted to cover before I pass over to our panelists here. I do want to encourage each and every one of you to vote. This is a very important issue for our profession. This is the future of our profession, and we need to make sure that each and every one of us has a say on how we move forward. I know some people do think, well, you know, looking at what's going on across the provinces, you know, we're okay with this, we think it's going to move forward, and they aren't engaged and have no intention to vote. Well, we're here to tell you that we need each and every one of your votes. Council wants to see a significant support from their membership. The only way that we can see that is by each and every one of you getting out there and voting and showing Council the direction that you want to move as we move forward. You can vote online or by mail. We've tried to make the process as easy as possible. We also, as Chris mentioned, have our voting booths here. So if you do get your questions answered, you have all the information you need and you know what you would like to vote, feel free to vote before you leave today. And as you're doing that, remember we're also having our council members vote as well as our bylaw change vote, so you might as well just log on and vote for both of those at the same time. We have sent our unification packages out. We do encourage each and every one of you to read through those and get the information. Make sure you know the facts before you cast that vote. We have lots of other information available. If for some reason you don't get your questions answered or you're not comfortable asking them in this type of an environment, we will be around after for some one-on-one questions, but there's also a lot of material available. And as you're talking to your colleagues, I would encourage you to point them in this direction to make sure that they get the information that you've been able to receive. We also encourage you to follow us on Twitter. And if you have questions you want to ask and you're not comfortable, you don't get a chance to contact somebody directly, please email us at the feedback account. And we have a team sitting by that will be able to answer all of your questions. So I think that's enough of talking from me this morning. I'm going to pass it over to our panelists now so that they can share some of their views and ideas on the unification project and allow a lot of time for you guys to ask your questions. So I'm going to pass it over to our president, Marilyn. You have a few words.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and certainly it is really nice to see so many of you here this morning to be engaged in this discussion, this dialogue that we need to have about unification, to get more information, to help you be informed when you cast your ballot to vote. So, I do want to really echo Rachel's comments. Council is elected on your behalf. We have tried to act on your behalf in what we believe is the best interest of the profession and also the public interest. But to move forward, Council believes, and the Government of Alberta has clearly told us, that in order to move forward with unification, we need to know how our members feel about it. And the only way for us to know is if each of you become engaged in that discussion, thoughtfully consider the information, the alternatives, the current environment, and cast your ballot, either for or against. Council will look at that, consider that, and that vote will guide how Council moves forward. So the vote of each and every member is important. It's not a done deal. If our members vote no, we will listen and act accordingly. So I thought that I would share with you a few comments about why Council felt it was important to return to the unification discussions. So as you recall, in December of 2012, Council made a decision to withdraw from unification discussions. And that decision was really based on two key matters. One, we did not have, from Council's perspective, sufficient information on certain matters to be able to understand what unification would mean to the CA profession in Alberta. And those key matters related to things like the certification, the education program, the governance structure of the organization going forward, and how we as CAs would protect the brand that we have created in our 100-year history. So that was one key matter that we needed, that made us uncomfortable. The second one was that we had heard from a large number of our members that they too were not comfortable with the unification proposal as it currently existed. And so for those reasons, Council made the decision to withdraw. So fast forward to the fall and December of 2012, Council made a decision to return to unification discussions, and one would ask, well, why? And, you know, several things. Unification did not slow down. The pace of unification, in fact, accelerated in other jurisdictions. We knew that all CA bodies in Canada, except Alberta, were participating and actively moving forward to unify the accounting profession under the CPA banner. And we felt that it was very important that our members participate as in a full partnership with our colleagues across the country. That national branding, that national collaboration, cooperation has stood us well for 100 years, and we believed it was important to our future. We also knew that in that intervening time period, literally hundreds of accounting professionals across this country had dedicated enormous amounts of time to clarify those matters that we in Alberta were concerned about. The certification model, we clearly know what it looks like now. We know it looks a lot like the current CA model. It culminates in a comprehensive multi-day exam, which is something that's familiar to us and been important to us. We also know that the regulatory environment, the principles of maintaining or enhancing the rules of professional conduct, monitoring, and enforcement will be retained so that our brand, the brand that we have worked so hard to build, will be there for us going forward. We also, feel very comfortable that the quality, the reputation of what we have built will be there in that new CPA brand, and that I personally believe, as do all members of council, that over time we will be as proud of that CPA brand as we currently are of the CA brand. So thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Pass it over to Matt Boodle now. If you have a few words, I think it'll turn on.
Sure, okay. I think it turns on. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to listen to me today. I've done this a couple of times. I did this several years ago when we advanced these things, and I was very thankful for the very soft response in the front row because they did tend to get blocked my way. There we go. So, I come from this from the perspective of having, while pride might not be a virtue in all cases, just an overwhelming degree of pride in the designation that I've worked for and that I share with virtually all of you today as a CA designation. With that in mind, however, one of the hallmarks of that designation is some big element of serving the public interest first. And the people have got to be able to trust us, to trust our objectivity, and when we call a spade a shovel, it is what it is. And I think that that will have to continue, and I do believe that will continue under unification. If we look at the fact we have 3 accounting designations today, the CA, the CMA, and the CGA, that is an historical fact. It has happened, it happened for various reasons, and that's where we are today. In my mind, I struggle to see how we can be a party to serving the public interest as long as those 3 different designations exist under different banners, under different billboards on street corners, under different standards as to how one qualifies. I just don't see it. They've all got merit. They're all worthy of being in the same tent. But most importantly to me, and I'll keep it very short, is something you touched on, Marilyn, which is the back end of all this. I think a lot of our discussions today and over recent months and over decades have been about how one attains their designation in each respective chamber. And, there's a U fee, there's this, there's that, and there are differing perceptions of the level of rigor or difficulty for people to get onto those things. Fun and I don't want to talk about those arguments today. What I do want to talk about, what I think is profoundly important, is the big remainder of our career after we get that envelope that's set and passed. Because we still have a very great responsibility thereafter to make sure we continue to hold the values we learned as our students, to maintain continuing professional conduct, to indeed be on a lifelong channel of learning. and that we need a common body to enforce common standards across 3 merged accounting groups, so that there is a level playing field, so that a member of the public, when they engage the services of a CPA, knows that there are common post-designated standards, that there are common people enforcing those standards, and that all of us are accountable to the same degree. And that, to me, is the biggest benefit of the merger of these designations. And if I put my public interest hat on, that's the biggest win for the public interest, and probably the biggest reason why I happen to be violently in support of the proposals. And when I figure out my numbers and my passwords, that's where I'm going to go vote after this. So enough said. I'll turn the line back to others.
Thanks, Matt. And just in case you forget those member numbers, our staff will be able to help you find that and your password. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Darcy, and he's a member of our industry. He's worked in public practice and industry, and so he should be able to share a bit of a unique perspective as well.
Thanks, Mel. When this email came out a couple of years ago, I wasn't really supportive of the initiative. Mainly because there was a lot of wind and bluster about doing it, but there really wasn't a lot of information. And all of us, growing up professionally, is wanting information in order to make a decision. So when the Alberta Institute decided to pull out of the discussion with the national body, I was supportive of that because we didn't really have a lot of answers yet. And I was always reasonably comfortable with the concept. I wasn't real happy with the information we received from either from Alberta or the information from the national body. So when we re-engaged in our discussion in December, most of the things I was concerned about had actually been addressed. This really won't affect us. We have our designations, we're working. It's really more what we do in our profession than what we have. This really does impact the students in university and the kids that are in Calgary or about to finish Calgary and are going to write. So you have a very small group that is significantly impacted in the next few years. For us, it doesn't impact us that much. It costs us to change our business cards. We will still do what we do. We might have a different moniker at the end of our name, but we'll still do what we do. But we're proud of our profession. Some are violently emotionally attached to our profession, which creates a hurdle, I think, for discussions like this. My biggest concerns was the certification. Will that be as robust as what we went through? To me, from what I've seen, yes it is. Tagging. We love our CAs. We're very proud of our CAs. Does this go away when this happens? Absolutely not. We can keep it, we can tag it, we still have it. We can still be very proud and show we went through this program. Because a lot of us like to say that we went through this program. My wife's a CJ, she hates the fact that I talk about the state program all the time. Sorry, honey. And then, those are really the two big things for me, was the education component and the legacy part. And also the mobility. A lot of us have worked in different parts of Canada. A lot of us have worked in different parts of the world. The designation has helped smooth that. One of the issues I have with not being supportive of this is the impact that may have on our mobility. Again, it won't directly impact our mobility because it's what we have done. It's not what we have. It will have a potentially not great impact on the younger CAs who don't have that breadth of experience yet. And if they want to go to the US, go to Ontario, or go to Manitoba, or go to BC, we're the lone island in the ocean, that may be difficult for them. Again, that may be something that the firms have to deal with because most of the transfers we've done are with our firms. But that is a concern for the younger generation, is the impact on mobility if we don't see support for this significantly. So again, when this came out, I wasn't that supportive of the concept because there wasn't a lot of information. Fast forward to now, there's a significant amount of information. The Institute's been very good at repeating this information, and I think the core concerns that most of the group would have been addressed, and lots of forums have been provided to us to discuss these. So look at the pamphlets, look at the websites, talk to council, talk to your fellow colleagues, your fellow CAs, but most importantly, get out there and vote. We have a real low turnout traditionally for stuff within the ICAA for members and for bylaws. This is one thing where we can't have, I wonder did we vote in 2003 for this? Yeah, that was worlds away different than what we have right now. This was the way it should have probably been done in 2003. So, regardless of your support, not support, find the information, satisfy yourselves into the issues that you see have or have not been addressed, and then go and vote. And the Institute's made it quite easy for us to vote. So I'll end off with just get your information, make a decision, and just vote.
Thanks, Darcy. I'll pass it over now to Rob, who's our Vice President, so our incoming President, for some few comments.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for coming out to listen to us today. We do really appreciate this. And while there's been a lot of very admirable things set up here today, I apologize up front because the reason I support unification is much more self-serving, and that's because I'm the incoming president. And with council, I have to deal with whatever it is that you decide. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and actually I've lost some sleep over it, because I think if we get a yes vote, it's very simple. We join in with unification, we get on board, and we go ahead into the future. If we vote no, I really, as council, we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, because heaven forbid we're hoping that we get a yes vote. But if we vote no, what will happen? Well, let me speculate for you, and keep in mind these are my comments and not council's comments. But the first thing that will happen is that we won't be able to, most likely we won't be able to put students into CASB in September, because it will be the CASB program. We won't be supported by the CPA Canada, so that will probably happen. We will lose the youth. It won't be right away. We still have people in the old CASB, and they will write in 2014 with a makeup in 2015, so they would have an exam to go to. But without students in CASB, we wouldn't be able to enter into the CASB Uniform Final Examination. The other thing is that we may be cut off from the CICA or CPA Canada. We may lose a number of the services that they provide for us, and we wouldn't really have the support of the CICA. So what would happen? Well, chances are that the government would get upset because our members would lose mobility, the new members would lose mobility because they wouldn't have a designation, or it would be something that we as the ICAA designed, a training program and a designation. Chances are that the CPA Canada would support the CGAs and CMAs in Alberta that have already merged and give them the CPA name. Oh, there'd be a big legal battle, because we actually have the rights as the ICAA for the CPA initials, but I mean, lawyers would make a bunch of money, but in the end, the government would probably step in, and we would have an organization in Alberta which we would not be part of. And then I could speculate even further and say, well, it'd be interesting, because as an merged CMA CGA organization, if I was running that, the first thing I would do is say, well, why don't we make an offer to the CAs who are in an association that is sort of running out of gas, doesn't have a training program, and would have to spend a lot of money for services and a bunch of other things. Why don't we make them an offer to walk across the street? They can join us. We'll give them a CPA CA, and I guess if one's looking at paying a reasonable fee there and an exorbitant fee for our organization to keep things going and to develop our own programs and be an island in the middle of the big national body, we could do that. So I think when I think this through, no matter which way you go, we end up merged and part of unification. And it can be, we can go through it with a yes vote and say, let's say yes, let's get involved, let's follow the agreement that we have, which is a good agreement. I was on the negotiating committee. It's not a great agreement. It's a good agreement. And the reason I say it's not a great agreement, because when we walked out of that room, nobody was happy, because everybody wanted something more and we didn't get it. But it's a good agreement because everybody agreed on it. We have the right of veto for the first 4 years. They cannot push us to do anything we don't want to do. The CPA program will remain the same. We're not going to lower the standards, and we're going to make sure that we continue on and work into the future. So I think from the perspective of what are our thoughts, I mean, if you think with your head instead of your heart, and I spend a lot of time thinking with my heart as well, the business decision here is to get on board now, have some control over the accounting profession in Alberta into the future, and work with the national bodies and our provincial counterparts to go forward with unification. So I do ask you as the incoming president to please vote yes. If you vote no, as Marilyn said, we will work towards that and come up with the best solution we can. But I think we don't really have a lot of choice other than to get involved with this, get involved early, and we have some control. So anyway, thank you for listening to me, and I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thanks. I think I'll pass it over to Chris now for the next portion. I believe we're moving into our questions and answers now.
Juggling, yeah. That's it for presentations. We're now open for discussion, for Q&As from the floor. We have some staff members with microphones, so if you just put up your hand and we'll get to you and try and get to everybody.
Hello, my name is Susan Corba. And my question relates to the status of how the votes went in the other provinces. I hear from the panel that we don't go ahead with this, we're going to be the lone wolf. And I just was curious to know, like, has the vote taken place in the other provinces of the CAs, and sort of what were the statistics there, and the feedback that any feedback you can give us on how it went in the other provinces, the acceptance ratio, I guess. Thanks.
I can respond to that, and I might ask Rachel to top it up, but yes, there have been either unification votes or in some jurisdictions, rather than calling it a formal vote, they've called it an advisory vote. And, you know, in my view, my understanding of an advisory vote is it's seeking input from members in that jurisdiction, and that will be one of the considerations that the council will use to make a determinative decision. In Alberta, we have articulated that our vote is not advisory. What our members tell us is how council is going to act. So we sincerely hope we don't get a split vote, which isn't going to give us direction. We are looking for direction. In terms of your question about the thresholds of the votes, be they advisory or fully, what do you call it, regulatory, the numbers, and I'm not going to give them all to you because I don't know them off the top of my head, but for example, in Manitoba, my recollection was that the vote was 50...
It ended at 61.
61. In most other jurisdictions, it was in the high 50s and potentially in the 60% range. And so each of those jurisdictions is acting based upon that member vote.
Yeah, maybe just to add a little bit to that, Manitoba was one of the first provinces to go out for their vote, and they did get around a 61%, I believe. And if you're more interested in that, if you go to each of the individual provincial websites, those details are on there. One of the more recent votes was in New Brunswick, and they were up in the 74 to 84. I can't remember which one was the number of people who voted versus their agreement, but they were well up into the 70 percentages for in favor. Quebec did not have a vote. They were legislated by their government to go through the process. BC had their vote, and they had a very good response rate. They had theirs over a year ago, and very clear direction to move forward there. Saskatchewan also, they were in the 60 range for their vote with the CAs and CMAs, and it should be announced within this next week as to what their percentages are for bringing the CGAs on board. So we are one of the last ones to go for member vote. But there are a few provinces that are going to go back to member vote in the East Coast just to make sure, like PEI, to make sure their members are on board with the CGA side, but they've completed their votes with the CAs and CMAs. Each of the provinces have received what they needed for their level of voting to move forward with the unification. Ontario is the one who's currently out for a vote with us, and theirs is an advisory vote. They have said that they will consider the vote results in the direction that the council will go, but the decision will be made by council. What we're looking for is a regulatory vote, so technically 50+1 would tell council that they could move forward, but as Marilyn mentioned, and I'm sure Rob can reiterate, that's not what they're looking for. They want to be able to show that there's a clear direction for them as to where they should move forward. Remember, they are elected by you, their peers, and they are representing you, and they want to make sure that they're moving in the direction that you want to go. The government has also indicated that they want to see significant support from our membership. The CAs and CMAs have had their votes, and they have received significant support up into the 70% ranges here in Alberta. But we want to be able to show the government that our members support this significantly, so council would like to see those percentages much higher in order to move forward with the unification.
Hi, my name's Mark Schilling. I had two questions, one of which is being answered. And I'm just curious, as a follow-up question to the 50.1%, why the various organizations would consider such a significant matter to just require a simple majority rather than a 2/3 or 3/4 majority. and you may not be able to answer that. But my other question and concern is the amount of money that this profession has spent branding the CA designation. And it strikes me that if we need to go forward with a merger, that has been a colossal failure. And I'd just be interested in Council's comments on that.
These are remarks, Mark, from somebody on past council. We have spent a lot of cash on branding, there's absolutely no doubt. I cringed in my time on council at voting in favor of some of the budgets that we had going forward for messaging, billboards, and the like. Some of which I think were responsive or reactionary to the advertising and program of others. You may have fair comment. I won't necessarily say whether that branding failed or succeeded. I tend to look more forward with things and say, what is the better future branding? What is the better use of tomorrow's funds? And, you know, additional battle of the billboards between 3 different competing quality accounting designations is, I don't think, a good use of tomorrow's money without reflecting on how yesterday's money was spent. Yeah.
Maybe Marilyn, did you want to just add a little bit to that as well?
Could I just ask a follow-up to that? And that is, what's the go-forward branding plan? My understanding is that we're going to brand this. It's going to be a CPA CA branding, a CPA CGA branding, and a CPA CMA branding. So, you know, all I see is money going out the door on a continuous and ongoing basis.
So, going forward, the plan is that the branding would be CPA only branding. So it wouldn't be CPA CA branding, CPA CGA branding. It's CPA branding. And that branding is a carry forward of the branding and the brand that we have built as the CA profession. Being, we are the preeminent accounting designation, we are a unified accounting designation, we are not competing, we are one and we are stronger as one. And as Matt said, it's clear to the public, one brand, preeminent, very strong, rigorous, high quality. And, you know, just for your information, there is intent to go out with the CPA branding in the fall. And your question on the 50 plus 1%, I'd just like to respond to that in that, you know, any regulatory vote held by the ICAA requires a 50 plus 1% threshold, and that is what's in the regulation, what is required. That said, as Rachel and Rob have mentioned, you know, we want to have clear direction. We don't want to split. 50 plus 1 doesn't give us a lot of comfort that there is significant support, significant momentum. So it is important to reiterate once again, please vote. Please tell us what you think, be it yay or nay. We do need your input and your direction to guide our future.
Ken Cudmore, I have a question concerning our history. If we look back 30, 40 years ago, we had a similar situation in the 60s where there were APAs and the CA profession went forward and encouraged or brought those people, those folks in. And what resulted was there was another need, and that need became filled by the CGA started up and they started another educational program. No one really talks about the elephant in the room, which is, of course, what do we as CAs really feel about the quality of our designation compared to the quality of some of the other designations. It seems to me that what we're doing is we're absorbing other groups and we're giving them our brand and our quality and we're labeling them that. And we're basically going forward, whether we're calling it a CPA or a CA, as a group of CAs. Now, whenever any society has a need, something usually happens to satisfy that need. So the way Canada is legislated, it seems that we have been terribly unsuccessful over our entire history of being able to limit who is able to practice public accounting and use accounting designations throughout Canada. And I don't see anything in this proposal that suggests that we are going to be able to limit them or that we are limiting them. So it seems to me we've simply picked up a whole bunch of other members who a lot of us honestly feel would struggle to get through the same qualification process that we went through. So we've got them, and we're going to bring in all these new people as students, and they are all going to have varying levels of skill, some better than others, and they're all going to try to get their CPA. Maybe some of them will be successful, or maybe we'll have the same problem. A lot of it really comes down to the relevancy of what we do and our education program. I think we have to look back over the last 30 or 40 years that I've been in CA and look at where have we failed as a group to provide the appropriate level of education that the public actually needs, because we've done a very poor job of being able to distinguish why we as CAs were the preeminent, or are the preeminent designation. So I'm a little confused as to what the need for all of us is to actually merge. It's quite, I think we're going to end up with another resurgence of other designations, and we'll be at it again in another 10 years or 15 years. And I don't know how we intend to stop that, and I'm not really sure that this other designation with a bunch of initials after them is going to assist the public in determining who's who at the zoo.
That was definitely a multi-leveled question, so let me start with where I think you are, and I'll try to work down. If I miss something, you can let me know. The first thing I think is to limit the number of additional designations coming into Alberta. And I think that kind of detail wouldn't be in the agreement. That detail would be in RAPA, which is the act that we would operate under. And RAPA now in Alberta is an interesting situation because we're the only province that has all three designations under one act. Every other province has one act for each designation. Our goal on the new RAPA, because we'll have to open up RAPA and adjust it to get the CPA in, is to try to get as many names, monikers, whatever you want, protected, maybe even just the word accountant, so that we can basically defer any other designations being formed in Alberta. The other thing we're doing is, it wasn't talked about today, but nationally there is a mid-tier program being developed. Now I don't know what it's going to be called, but it would not be CPA. It would be some kind of a technician level, and it would be it would be part of CPA Alberta. We would administer that in Alberta, as all the other provinces would. So we would have this technician type designation, so we would have control of that. So there really will be two designations, like the engineers, a professional engineer and then a technician of some kind. That's the goal. Plus through RAPA to stop any other, like the ACCA, which is an international designation, to stop any other designations forming in Alberta. That's the goal. Whether we're successful with RAPA, time will tell, but that's what we're shooting for. Just a step back. I mean, from the perspective of there were some comments earlier about the branding and that, and I think we have done an exceptionally good job at branding, because when we go talk to the other firms, they're basically a bit afraid of us. When we go talk to the government, they're concerned about the fact that this new program, this CPA program, looks a lot like the CA program, and they're concerned about our blossoming economy and where are we going to get the accountants. And we don't need CAs necessarily for every job. Where are we going to get these other accountants? And of course, this is where the mid-tier program comes in, and we're hoping we get that in the next month. So when we go to the government to negotiate this, we can have that in our back pocket as well. So I think we've done an extremely good job in promoting our brand, and I think we just did not have the defense mechanisms, or maybe there was no concern about it 30 years ago or whenever the CMAs and the CGAs and whatever started up in Alberta. But on a go-forward basis, we're looking at that, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that this does not happen again. And from the perspective of watering down our brand, which is kind of what I think I heard you say by bringing all these designations in, I think totally the opposite is happening. We're bringing them up to our level, if that's how you want to describe it. We're taking a bit of, let's say, anguish initially by letting everybody in, but that's part of the reason for the tagging, so you can tell who's who in the zoo from the perspective of what their background is. And we're going to carry forward with that high level of professionalism on a go-forward basis. So while there may be some short-term pain, we're getting long-term gain, and I think that's very important from that perspective. So, I mean, overall, there is a lot of things that we have to do with this this merger. And I think we've nailed the big ones in the agreement. There's going to be a lot of detail that's got to be worked out over the next 3 years, and that's why we're here, and that's what we plan to do. And in discussing this with the other two designations, as I said earlier, having been on the negotiation committee, they are aware of the public interest side of things. They understand that, and they have basically said we would let you guys look after the regulation piece, which is good. And when you look at the three organizations, there isn't really a lot of crossover. I mean, we have the regulation and public practice review and that sort of thing. They tend to have more of the what I call the association things, the member recruiting and things of that nature. So we do fit together well, and we are going to continue that high standard. They've agreed with that, and I guess I mean, we have to wait for the legislation, but that's where council's going, and that's the idea behind that. I hope I've answered all of your questions.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that too, when we look at the other designations and we look back 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and we look at the education program that they had, it's significantly different than the education program required in the other designations today. So each and every one of the three designations here in Alberta requires a university degree with those accounting prerequisites in order to complete their program. The CGA program works a little bit different in that you can get into the program without a university degree, but to obtain your CGA designation, you do require a university degree. So each of those organizations have been bringing up their education program over the last few years, just as we have been improving our education program. So when you look at 20 years ago, those three designations, their education programs, their training, what they were even allowed to do. Like Rob mentioned, in Alberta, RAPA covers all three designations. All three designations are allowed to practice public accounting, and they're allowed to offer audit services to the public. So by bringing them all into the same body, we can make sure everyone's operating at the same standard. And for those of you who don't know, we have actually been doing the practice reviews of the CMAs since 2005. So any CMAs who have been practicing public accounting have been going through the same program as our CA firms and have been held to that same standard. We also meet with the CGAs each year to approve our checklist that we will use, and they are using the similar format and checklist throughout their practice reviews as well. So although there may have been huge differences in the past, we've continued as we've moved forward in all three of the professions, bringing those standards to a more similar level, and their education programs are at a higher level than they may have been in the beginning. And I do think this mid-tier certification, it's not a new designation. We aren't creating multiple designations. This is a certification level very similar to some of our colleagues in other professions, such as the legal profession and the engineering profession have done, in order to fill that niche of the marketplace of those who need a skill set that's not quite as high as the CPA qualifications would be, and for those people who, for whatever reason, don't want to go through the full CPA program. And again, getting your designation is very important, and but it's what you do with that designation as you move forward that's going to make all the difference. You have CAs who have come through as CAs, and they have chosen different paths than other CAs. As you look around the room here, everybody is at different stages within their careers, and they're doing different things. So when you look 10 years down the road, it's what all those people have done with those designations that's going to distinguish them, that's going to allow the marketplace to choose the needs that they need to fill with the people who meet those needs. Marilyn, did you have anything else to add?
The only other comment I'd like to make, and you know, I've been a CA for over 30 years, and you know, when I entered the profession, there were differences in the areas that CAs, CMAs, and CGAs practiced in. You know, today those differences have really narrowed, as Rachel mentioned. CGAs can now audit. They can audit public companies. From council's perspective, it's important that all accountants who are opining on financial statements be held to the same standard, the same regulation, the same oversight, the same enforcement. And we truly do believe that the public interest is served through this unification proposal. There will be a leveling of the playing field.
I'm John Perry. I'm a partner in a CA firm in Calgary. Personally, this unification process that has taken place over the last couple of years in Canada, the CICA initiative, the way the province has approached it, I have not been happy. I'm not happy with the flip-flop that the ICAA did. But now is not the time to navel gaze. I think we need to move forward. Alberta is a province of entrepreneurs. I'm very proud of my CA designation, and I think Alberta CAs need to step forward and they need to show leadership and they need to vote for this unification. My fear is if we don't unify, what do we in Alberta have? I was thinking we are going to be an island drifting out there in the ocean, because it would appear to me that ultimately all the provinces are going to unify. It was just mentioned to me that a better analogy is, no, we will be an iceberg that will be melting. And I think that's exactly what will happen if we don't unify. Another concern of mine is Alberta CAs have a very poor record of coming out and voting on the annual council elections. I understand the voter turnout is around 15, 17, 20%, which is absolutely abysmal. With something as important as this, as you have indicated, all of you, we need a very strong vote. We can't have the silent majority be silent and expect this to move forward. We need to show initiative. Alberta CAs need to take that leadership, show the leadership, and move forward. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Murray Mikulak. I had the honor of serving as president of the Alberta Institute in 2003-2004. I was actually involved, along with Doug Baker, at our first attempt to merge this profession. And at that time, I strongly supported unification, and today I still strongly support the unification. This vote is about what you want this profession to look like in 10, 15, 25 years. It's not about the past. It's not about trying to plan your future looking in the rearview mirror. You can't do it. You need to think about what you want this profession to look like for the next generation of CAs in 25 years. And that's the number one reason in my mind for supporting unification. One of my mentors here in Calgary, a man by the name of Art Smith, who many of you will know, I got to meet Art and work with Art through the Chamber movement, looked at my business card early in my career and it had CA behind it. And he looked at me and he said, "Murray, you just told me what you are, but you haven't told me what you do." The CA designation says what you are. Your resume says what you can do. I doubt any one of you in this room got a job just because you had CA behind your name. You got your job, you advanced in your career based on what you can do and what you could do in the future and what you had done in the past. And don't forget that. One of the things that we learned in the merger attempt 10 years ago from the PR people is that very point. The resume will determine and tell the world what you can do. The designation says what you are. For those of you who have ever tried to be involved in the accounting standards process, will realize now with the move to IFRS and the fact that we have an International Accounting Standards Board, it's been very difficult for Canada to have our voice heard. We've been very fortunate in our profession and within the Canadian Accounting Standards Board to punch above our weight. One of the things I'm really excited about a unified profession in Canada is it gives us a huge number of professional accountants when we're sitting at the Accounting Standards Board, and our participation in the development of Canadian accounting standards. And I think that's critically important if you think about where this profession is going to go in the next 25 years. And lastly, which one of you in this group would advise a client moving into Canada to have over 40 governing bodies? It makes absolutely no sense to have over 40 governing bodies in a profession, and I'm embarrassed that we allowed that to happen. Yes, part of it's because of the provincial jurisdictions, but it makes absolutely no sense. And Marilyn, I did vote yes for unification, and I expect my dues to go down from the efficiencies and economies of scale.
That'll be up to Rob.
Hi, quick question. Rob, you mentioned earlier something about a 4-year veto right. Can you expand on that 4-year veto right?
Did everyone hear that question? It was just asked.
The question that was asked is I made a comment about a 4-year veto right, and basically what I was meaning by that was pursuant to the agreement, we're assuming that we have probably 2015 we could get the legislation. So between the time if we get a positive vote until the time we have new legislation, the 3 bodies are going to be operating under a unification board. And the board consists of 12 members. There'll be 3 members from each of the CMAs, CGAs, and CAs, and 3 public members. And so we will have 1/3 of the seats on that board. And in order for anything to be approved, we basically required that it have a unanimous vote. So if we have one person against it, it won't go forward. Now that's a bit of a concern from the perspective we may not get anything done, but we think that we will. And it was put in there as sort of a veto right for each organization, that if we were going in some direction that wasn't acceptable to any of the parties, that we would have that responsibility. When assuming we get RAPA and we become consolidated and we're working together, there will be the first board of the new organization will be appointed, and the other 2 bodies wanted us to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and what we wanted was representative. And if you look at the number of CAs in the total population of CAs, CMAs, and CGAs, we've got about 45%. So what we agreed to was 4 CAs, 3 CMAs, 2 CGAs, and 3 public members on that first board. And they will be appointed by the existing councils. So they will appoint the people for 1 year. And then each year there will be one less appointment. So it'll be 3, 2, 1, and the rest will be voted from at large. So there will be starting to be elections after the first year. But we will have guaranteed CAs on that board for the first 3 years of that. And I said 4, it's probably 5, because it'll probably take us 2 years under the unification committee, and we will have the right to control whatever happens. We can stop anything that we don't agree with. So the other side of that is, some people say, well, in the agreement that you've negotiated, there's no dispute resolution clause. And we purposely left that out because we have no idea how we're going to get along. We think we are, based on our initial indications are that it's going to be very good and that we should get along fine. But I mean, trust is a thing that's earned, and we have to earn that trust. So what we've done is basically left that to the new board, and it may be a year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, and if they decide they need some kind of a dispute resolution system, then they will vote on it, and it will have to be a unanimous vote, so everyone will have to agree on it. And I think at that point, when they've been running for 2 or 3 years and they know how things work, that they would be in a much better position to put that in. So that was guaranteed. So I guess just to answer your question, the reason I said that is that we will have CAs on the board. They require unanimous agreement on specific things that relate to regulation, governance, and with a few other issues that are that will be important. I mean, if it relates, it will relate to things like the new CEO of the organization. That will require unanimous support as well. So I mean, from that perspective, we plan to get an outside HR firm to come in, run a program or a competition, pardon me, and they will come back with a recommendation for the best persons for a job, and then our council, the unified council, would vote on that. So that's what I meant by that. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and just to clarify for those of you who may be sort of reading through the agreement, that unanimous veto right is in the agreement, and it's actually not limited. It goes on forever. The reason Rob sort of says, well, it's about 4 years, is because we are guaranteed to have CPA-CAs on that new board for that 4-year period. After each year, like Rob mentioned, a position comes available and it's elected from the general population. So in fact, it is possible that at the end of the 4-year term where those appointed members have come off, you could have all CPA-CAs, depending on who puts their name forward for council, how many of our past members get out and vote and support those people. If people don't put their name forward and our members don't participate, it's quite possible you could have the other thing. So it is important as we move forward for each and every one of our members to stay engaged in the process. But that veto right was put in there to protect the fact that our education program is rigorous. We've told you it's rigorous, and we don't want in 3 years, if the fear is true of some people that, oh, those other designations aren't going to make it through the program, we don't want them then having the ability to reduce those standards and to make that program less rigorous as we move forward. In order for that program to be changed, those CAs that have been appointed to the board, who represent you, have been elected by you, who are CAs and who are proud of their designation, of the rigor of their profession, are there to say, no, you can't do that. We keep it as high as we can. This is also a national program, so the risk there is also alleviated a bit there. But that's sort of what Rob was referring to, just to clarify in case you're reading through the plan and trying to reconcile what he said with what's in the plan.
Thank you. My name is Valerie Kinnear, and I've been a faculty member at Mount Royal University for 24 years. And it's true there has been a lot of change in terms of what's gone on with the accounting designations over that period of time. Previously, to be a CMA, CGA, which is what we educated when I first started there, you didn't need a degree, and that's changed long ago. But I'd like to speak about the future, and that is, even though in the past, since we've been able to educate CAs at Mount Royal University, I've always encouraged the top students to go CA. I would no longer do that. There wouldn't be a point. There isn't a CA. The iceberg has melted. We would be encouraging students now to do the CPA route. There's no doubt about that.
A question on continuing professional development. Have you sorted out how that will operate given the different streams that CPAs will follow in the future and the different streams that new members will have followed to get their CPA, comma, something else? CPD is pretty important.
Marilyn?
Sure, I can take that one. So we will be working through the details of that naturally as we move forward, but if you look at our profession now, we currently have different streams in order to get your CA designation. Since 2004, around there, you have been allowed to train to be a CA outside of public practice. And so you can work in an industry environment and obtain your CA designation without working in the public practice area. So the CA profession has ample experience in having those CPD requirements as you move forward apply to all of our CAs, regardless of where you trained. Now those CAs who have trained outside of public practice, they can't then go open up their own shop and hang their shingles and do audit work. They would need to come and article under a CA practice in order to get those hours they require in the assurance and tax areas. What this program actually opens up the opportunity for us to do is also require them to maybe take those 2 elective modules in assurance and tax to get that core depths and breadths that they need to practice in public accounting. So as we move forward, the same thing would be true. Those who train in different routes, if they want to change into public accounting, for instance, they would need to take additional CPD requirements, likely those 2 elective courses that we mentioned, which in the other stream, and they need to top up their practical assurance hours. All CPAs, on a go-forward basis, if that's the direction we go, would be required to maintain that level of professional development that's required. The agreement says that we will be setting that at the highest standard and working from there. So those CPD requirements that we have in the CA profession would carry forward, unless when we get into the details, the other professions have a more rigorous requirement, then it would be topped up to that. So as we move forward, the CPD will continue similar to the way it does today. I think by joining the organizations together, it actually gives us an opportunity to provide more post-designation CPD to our members that meets the needs of not only the public practice realm, which we do often get a lot of comments from our members saying that our CPD is focused in that area, but also to expand to provide that CPD required for those who operate in public sector, in the industry sectors, oil and gas, those types of industries. So really by building those 3 organizations together, we can offer our members a higher level and a better level of CPD as we go forward.
Gregory Brennan, if you listen to Rachel and Rob, I think there might be more of a practical aspect to this that people shouldn't ignore. If we believe that the hurdle to get a designation is no less than what it was when I did it, and if we listen to Rob and say that where are we going to be? Demographically, Alberta is 10% of the country. If we're going to be, where are we going to be if 90% of the country is doing something else? So I take the comment about an iceberg that might be moving south. But really, isn't this a question about our faith and trust in council? And then I'd ask the question: does council have the ability to look at and move forward without, and if you hear the percentages that you said in other provinces, what does council see as the mandate to go forward? Is it only 14% of our members voted and 52% said yes, or 28% voted and 49% said yes? So where is council with that? Does it have the ability? Does it have a mandate? And maybe that's why Ontario is doing the softer vote, whatever it's called, so that council can choose. Do we have faith in council, who has been at the table, who has met with other institutes, who who has worked with the details of, who has seen what it's going to look like, has taken the assurances. Yes, we can look at the agreements and read them ourselves, but this is our board of directors to tell us and help us move forward.
Sure, that is a great question, and yes, indeed, all members of council, we have deliberated, we've argued heatedly at times, as you might expect. We are all individuals from all CAs, yes, but from different backgrounds, working diligently on our members' behalf in what we believe to be the best interests of the profession. And so yes, I think that, as members of council, we do have more information than the average member. And so as council, as the Institute, we have been working incredibly hard to try through multiple mediums, Twitter, webinars, face-to-face sessions. We've been going into corporations, large employers, meeting with individuals, because for us, having this face-to-face dialogue and discussion and hearing your perspectives, hearing your questions, trying to provide you with more information is important. Your question about, kind of what is the threshold, what is the tolerance? Council has not set a bright line, if you will, that, we need at least a 60% vote from 40% of our members or some such. We are treating this as a regulatory vote. We believe it's an important vote. We can encourage our members to vote. We can give you lots of opportunity by paper, electronic to vote. It is up to our members to vote. And so it will be the members who vote who will determine the future direction. And yes, it is a 50 plus 1%, but as indicated, Council is looking for some clear direction from our members, and that means our members need to tell us. It is critical that you vote. This is not a done deal. Your vote, each and every one of you, is important to the future of this profession and our future together collectively.
I'm Tammy Thompson. I'm a partner in public practice, and I have a really practical question. I love, first of all, the fact that you're making voting so available to everybody by being able to log in your vote on the website. I think that's fantastic. I noticed that you're showing a pie chart for council votes right now in terms of the numbers of members that are voting, and I'm watching to see how high that number goes, but I noticed that you don't have the same information on the unification vote, and I have to say I'm actually much more concerned about ensuring that we have really strong voter turnout on unification, and I don't know, I think we're all numbers people, we're accountants, we like to see the numbers, and I think we probably would be able to encourage one another if we saw those numbers weren't where we wanted them to be. I'm wondering if you might consider putting that data up there for us to follow over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I think I can address that. We have been working with our chief scrutineer to see what we can do. We just are being very careful to make sure that we run this vote appropriately, independently, and so that the results in the end are not questioned. But we have heard that actually from several members since we've opened the vote, that it would be nice to have that. So we will talk to our chief scrutineer and see what we can do to also show that. Just one other thing I just wanted to point out is we do have a couple council members here, of course, Marilyn and Rob, and we also have Jason hiding out there at the back there. So please, if you didn't get your questions answered, approach any one of us on the panel, and Jason is there as well, and he's in industry at a CA training office, so if you do have specific questions to that need, please seek him out. Thanks.
So I just wanted to just have a couple concluding comments here. First of all, if you feel like you still need more information, as has been mentioned, there is a unification website on the Alberta CA website, so www.albertaca.ca/unification. There's lots of information there, including details of the full unification plan. The issue of Spotlight, the Institute's quarterly magazine, should have just arrived on your desk. That has a lot of information about unification as well. I want to thank all the panelists, but most of all, I want to thank all of you for showing up today. It was great to hear your perspective, and we hope we were able to answer some of your questions. Lastly, just want to encourage you to cast a ballot, whether that's at the voting booths, which you can do right now if you'd like to vote, or go back, ruminate, think about it, go back to your desk, do it online, send in your mail ballot as well. And just a last note, the Institute's AGM and a number of other events are occurring on June 21st to 23rd at the Jasper Park Lodge in Jasper, and we'd certainly love to see you all out there in Jasper. It's beautiful, and hope to see you there. Have a great day, everyone.